What a privilege to sit here in person. It's a bit surreal.
Not about
Actually, I have expected some of you to come with black on your faces. So now I'm able to see everybody. Baruch Hashem, it's not on Zoom. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege always to learn together. Certainly when we're in person, extra special. And especially Erev Pesach is a super, super busy time. To make the time to come out to learn about Pesach is a very special thing. And it's extra, super duper special for me to have my esteemed mother here, the legendary Maura Klein, where everything comes from, all of our teaching capacities and everything. My father's side a little bit as well, but really from my mother. And so it's a real schus to have her here. So let's jump in. We're going to take a look at Pesach, and I'm going to try to speak through my cold as best as I possibly can, but I'm just going to acknowledge that at the outset. And I wanted to take a look at the concept of korech. Korech is one of the foundational symbols of the Pesach Seder. After marar and the matzah, so then we are korech, the marar and the matzah together. We make a bit of a sandwich. We put them together. What's the depth of that? So this piece is from Rav Kluger. And the reason why I wanted to learn this particular piece is because I feel that it captures not only the depth of what korech is, but much more broadly speaks about geula and galus, and gives us a perspective that I think can enable us to really understand what Pesach is all about, but even more broadly to understand the time that we're living in now. So I think it's doubly apropos and relevant. So b'siyata d'shmaya, and also with great appreciation to Aviva for hosting. Thank you so much for making this possible. Let's jump in. You don't even need to share the screen this time. Okay, let's jump in. Korech. B'simin korech anu oisim zeichel adarkoi shel Hillel. Like we say, zeichel amikdash Hillel, right? That's what it is. Hillel was the first one to institute that we are korech. We put together, interpolate the matzah and the maror bizman shel Beis Hamikdash kayam. At the time that the Beis Hamikdash was standing, asher nohag lichrech es hamatzah v'hamar v'lo achlam b'yachad. This was the minhag. They took the matzah, they took the maror, they made a sandwich, and they ate it together. Like we say in the Haggadah, Zecher leMikdash Hillel. This is what we do even today. And this is in the Gemara in Psachim, this is a Bavli. He brings over here in the parentheses that B'das HaYerushalmi, which by the way I just learned last week in Britain, they have no idea what you mean when you say parentheses. They call them brackets. And what we call brackets, no, so they call parentheses round brackets. Round brackets and then brackets. So he thought I was saying phylacteries. He had no idea what I was talking about. I thought I was talking about tefillin. I was like, it says in the parentheses, you mean phylacteries. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So now it makes me wonder how many other things they misunderstand, which might explain some things. Anyway, okay, fine. So now, so it says over here well, these are actually brackets anyway. L'chol hadez. But das Yerushalmi, it's brought in the Gemara Yerushalmi shehillel karach gamas haPesach yachad imam, that he would actually put the carbon Pesach there too. So it wasn't just the matzah; it was like the whole thing. Pesach, matzah, marar. That he would put all of these together. Ukvar richa rishonim b'das habavli b'zeh, and the rishonim discuss at length as to whether or not the Bavli agrees with this. Obviously, that's not our minhag today. We put just the two together: the Pesach and the matzah and the marar. The Bia Shitas Hillel. To understand the Shita of Hillel, Amr Chazal, the Gemara Psachim tells us right at the very end, Ari Psachim, Shekachu Pirish es Lashon HaKasav. Where did Hillel get this idea from? Why did he do this? Right? It's not stam like he was interested in eating a sandwich, right? Or that he thought that this was a more expedient way of doing it. Why did he put these two things together? Obviously, he was learning it from the Torah. Says the Gemara, Shekachu Pirish es Lashon HaKasav. This is actually the way that he interpreted the pasuk in Shemos, which says matzos al merorim yechluhu, that you shall eat the matzos al merorim, on the marar yechluhu, you shall eat them. Hainu sheyesh le'echalas haPesach yachad im hamatzah v'hamara. So he's learning it al merorim together. Pirush Mordechai, and the Mordechai, one of the early commentators, explains shehil pirush is tevas al. He understood this word al, upon, as yachad. Got to eat them together. And mamish together, right? Not just stam together, like in the sense of you eat the Pesach and the matzah while at the same time in the same setting. He mamish meant al means literally together as one. Uki'ilu nichtav, and according to Hillel, it was as if the pasuk had written matzos yachad im meroirim yechluhu, you shall eat them literally together as one. V'yeshepersha, there are others that learn that Hillel lamar kain mimashakasav yechluhu. That I'm not a grammarian, so I don't know exactly what the alternative would have been. But apparently, yechluhem could be. I don't know. Yeah, okay. That's possible. But maybe it would have the mem at the end, right? Speaking about plural, yechluhu means you shall eat it. So what's it? You just told me, matzos amarorim, you mentioned two things. So what's you shall then eat it? So from there he learns, b'lashon yachad hainu ba'achila achas, and that's according to the Steipler, the Kilos Yaakov. Okay. What's the depth of this? We should be misponen, we should be contemplative about what the shita of Hillel is conceptually, right? Because in all of our learning, in all of our shiurim, we now understand based on how many parsha shiurim that we've learned from the Berditcher or from others that psukim don't mean really what the pasuk says. Of course it means that. But these are windows into whole worlds, universes of thought, much of which might not have anything to do with the literal, words of the pasuk or the literal meaning. And that's been our experience learning Chasidus and learning Pnimis HaTorah. Each word and each letter and each concept is like we said, a window into brand new vistas of thought. So, it's the same exact way when we come to Yamim Tovim and the symbols of those Yamim Tovim. There's a pasuk in Eov. We've probably learned this in the past in some form or other. The pasuk in Eov says, "Mi besari echse eloka." From the physical, we shall glimpse the divine. And we understand, we've learned very deeply, the whole physical world is the olam of Asiya, right? That is the physical manifestation of the world of Yitzira, which itself is some form of the world of Bria and then Atzilus, right? We've learned about all these stages in the context of davening and in many, many different contexts. We've mentioned this ladder of creation, as it were. And in this sense, there is quite literally nothing that exists in this world in any aspect, in any form, whether it's something that's physical, whether it's something that's laws of physics, really anything that is experienceable in this world that isn't rooted or isn't a manifested reflection of something in the spiritual realm beyond. So in that sense, the tzaddikim didn't walk through the physical world and believe that somewhere there was a ruchniistic world. We've learned this in the past. They felt that they were immersed in that spiritual world in the sense that they were able to look at everything and find the way in which that thing was a doorway into the spiritual root of that thing. And so to them, there was no stira. It wasn't like the body and the soul. It was being, right? It just was. It is. That's called malay chala aretz kavoida. The whole world is saturated with the presence of the divine. Quite literally, the world in and of itself. Certainly, when it comes to talking about symbols, mitzvahs of Yom Tovim, every aspect of every symbol of every chag, when we talk about matzah, we talk about maror, when we talk about Hillel being korech, the matzah and the maror together, it's clear that this is fine. Okay, so he learned it from a pasuk. What does it mean though? Right? What does it mean conceptually? We have to learn and train ourselves how to think in that much deeper way. So you have to learn the halachas of what it says, and then once we take a look at what the hanhagos are, what it means, to experience a Pesach Seder, every single detail of it is a vessel for much broader concepts. And that's the journey we're about to take now. So that's what he's saying over here. Once you think about the sheet of Hillel, irrespective of where he learned it from, cool. So that's where he got it from, the pasuk. Now that this is a thing that we do, Zeichel HaMikdash Hillel, we got to start thinking about what this means conceptually to put together Pesach. Thank you so much for coming. To put together matzah and maror. What is this? How is it possible to put the matzah and the carbon pesach and the maror together, again according to the Yerushalmi? What's the question? Harei hamaror nechal. The whole reason that we eat the maror is al shum shem maror hamitzrayim es chaya v'seinu b'mitzrayim. They embittered our lives. They made our lives miserable in Mitzrayim. That's what the maror is. It's literally mar. It's bitter. It's reminding us of the difficulty of the experience of slavery. But Pesach, the carbon Pesach, and the matzah on the contrary, they are the symbols of our redemption, and our leaving Mitzrayim. As we all know, the carbon Pesach is this that they brought right at the time of Makas Bechoros. And the blood they sprinkled on the doorposts, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu went ahead and he passed over the homes of the Bnei Yisrael, the Mitzrayim. Al Pasach, that's the carbon Pesach. V'hamatzah ne'echeles, and the matzah, of course, as all of us know, Al Shem Shalei Hispik B'Tzeikam Shalaviseinu L'Hachmitz. They went out so quickly. It was so, from 1 second to the next, in a blink of an eye, what we call b'chipazing. They rushed out. Shalei Hispik B'Tzeikam Shalaviseinu L'Hachmitz. They didn't have time for the dough to rise. Ad Shenigla Aleihem, Negala Aleihem, Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Ga'alam. Or all of a sudden, Mamish, Yeshua, like we say, Yeshua Hashem Keharif Ayin, how the salvation of Kadosh Baruch Hu comes in the blink of an eye. They didn't even have time to make any necessary arrangements. It happened. The dough that they were in the middle of what's it called? That what does it mean when a person makes a dough? You make dough for challah, for Shabbos. The presumption is, the premise of making challah is that you're going to have enough time before Shabbos to be able to, with leisure. Hopefully you're making a challah sometimes on Wednesdays, on Thursdays, even on Fridays, but early enough so that you should be able to complete the process, that the dough should rise, you should be able to put it in the oven and bake it. This was their mentality. They weren't going anywhere. This was their mentality. They had doughs sitting around on the counter that they had in mind, They'll get to it later and then it'll rise and then they'll put it in the oven and then it will bake for a couple of minutes, hours? Hours? Okay, just goes to show, It's not really my forte. But a couple of hours, all the more so. And then after that, you'll my mother taught me well, but different things. Challah baking, different things. So this was their mentality, right? And they didn't have time. All of a sudden, their doughs were still on the counter. They grabbed them and they ran with the dough. And the sun baked them in such a way, because it was spread out on their backs, baked it into matzah. So what's the symbol then? The symbol of Karban Pesach and the matzah is, of course, gula. Gula. Karban Pesach, makas b'chayres. And matzah, getting out of Mitzrayim, b'chipasa. B'imkein kasha. So again, conceptually, Keitzad efshar lichrich v'la'echel b'yachad es hamarar em ha'pesach v'hamatzah. It would seem to be completely contradictory to take the marar, which is a symbol of galus, and put it in between the matzah, and again, according to the sheet of Hillel, according to Yerushalmi, with the Karban Pesach nachbeser, together and to eat it together. The real spiritual value of these mitzvahs, they're two completely contradictory concepts. How does this work? Okay. Says Rav Kluger, Shlita, v'niftach sugya zu b'mashes bar b'makam acher. I wonder actually if the next Chizuk mission maybe can make a stop in Beit Shemesh and meet with Rav Kluger. So I think he does see women, maybe as a group or as a chidim. I could try to arrange it. So much of the Torah that I'm teaching these days is Rav Kluger. The Yichud Espodidus, Rav Kluger. Thursday night, the Shabbos series, we're learning Rav Kluger. Mamish, his Torah is exactly what we need in our time. And he's among us in our generation. Really kedai. We'll speak about it. Maybe I could try to help you arrange it. Okay. He says there's a concept that he's discussed in other places. He has voluminous, writings. Mamish, he's prolific writer. And I don't believe he actually wrote any of his Sfarim, personally. It's all his shiurim that he has Talmidim who sit and they go through them. They've put out shelves and shelves worth of Sfarim on the Parsha, on the Yom Tovim, on Halacha, on everything. And it's really beautiful Torah. So he's referring you here to somewhere else in his writings, Be'inyan Mitzvah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, where we speak about, and this is so crucial, the storytelling aspect of the Seder, where we recount the narrative. That's going to be a very important word. I want to speak now about narrative. The narrative of Yetzias Mitzrayim. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see the Chasidus course, the 10-part course on Chasidus. Anyway, we'll send a link again. It's Kedai. It's a short little clips, 15 minutes each. Over there, we have a whole thing on storytelling in the Hasidic tradition. I went very deep into this nikud of narrative. I'll give you a bit of a summary now about that. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and before I go further here, I just want to drop in a practical point for anybody who's running a Seder. And no matter what, you're running a Seder, whether it's for yourself or it's for your children or grandchildren or other family members, that there's always, it's useful. So we just had a Sunday night in London. Seems like a lifetime ago. Still, every time I come back here, it's like, what is that? What's London? What a place, Anyway, so it seems a long time ago. But just this Sunday night, we had a very beautiful pre-Pesach event for the community. And I collaborated my organization, Eilecha, as part of Jewish Futures, which is an umbrella with many different organizations, educational and chesed organizations. Otherwise, so we partnered together a few educators, me from Eilecha and somebody called Rabbi Zieben from Gift and Rabbi Daniel Rose, some of you might know from Aish, who's actually making Aliyah actually in the summer, and he's taking a position at Aish Yerushalayim, which is like a very big loss for us. Rabbi Rose, unbelievable. Anyway, so the three of us did like this pretty long, extensive, I don't know what you call it. It was just an event where all of us did workshops. Also, Robertson Shelby Friedman also did something for the women, and it went from about 7:30 to 10. It's like a very long evening. And so Rabbi Ziedman is a brilliant children's educator. He's an educator with Gift, which is a chesed organization, but they educate for chesed. It's not just chesed, like doing chesed. They go into schools, they do workshops on chesed, and on like bin adam l'chavero, all bin adam l'chavero kind of things. And Imamish has a genius for this kind of thing. So he gave a workshop on how to run an interactive Seder. Unfortunately, I think it may have been partially my fault it wasn't recorded, because I thought I'd help him because he had the same camera like this and he was fidgeting with it. I said, no problem. And I clicked, I think, the wrong button. Anyway, or it died, I don't know. Regardless, one point that he made among many points, and I'll try, Blineder, to get the PDF, I'll also send it to you to send around. He said he can send it to me. But one point that he made that I really think is super useful, and maybe it was even the crux of his whole message, he was reminding all of us that the Seder is not for Divrei Torah. It's really not. It is for Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. Just the simple, it's not a time for fancy drushes, and it's not a time for Chidushin. It's not. Maybe the day Su'udas are for that. Seder night, he said, is to just, and maybe that's even what the matzah is so simple, mamish, back to basics. No, find ways to enable yourself and your family and your children and grandchildren, Be'ez Hashem, to immerse themselves in the experience of what that must have been like. And he drew a distinction between distracting props and enhancing props. Listen to what he said. He said he has seen over the years of proliferation of families who feel that they need to keep it engaging, so they'll buy some like random set from 5 Towns Judaica, which like has like he said, like ping pong balls for Barad and all this stuff, and like it's cute, keeps the kids engaged. But he says those are still distracting props. The kids get their prizes, they run off from the table, and now they're playing with frogs. Lav dafka, did that help them experience, mamish experience? It's like somewhat related that now you have like a little finger puppet. Okay, but it's cute, it's good, right? Chas v'shalom, not taking away. But so what was he saying? He went online. All these things take time in this sin. He went online, and he did 2 things. First of all, he bought himself a account on AI with photo created, whatever, image generation, and he created the most breathtaking visuals of all aspects of Yetzias Mitzrayim, like the most incredible Haggadah you could imagine. Nebuch, Gadi Pollack went through all that work for what? Now with a few types you can. Anyway, so he produced and he blew them up big size, and he hangs them all around his room, or he pulls them out to tell the story, and that keeps the kids engaged. I would argue even more. He went online and he did the research to try to find artifacts from that time. Pictures, like you saw the pictures that I had printed out, pictures of statues of what Paro actually looked like. He found pictures online from the British Museum, I think, of a brick from that era, and you can see the straw in the brick. Things like this he called enhancing props. I thought it was such an interesting nukuda. So again, who has time? Everybody's busy. But it might be a really good idea. He had other good ideas as well. So I'm just mentioning that. Let's go back inside. Narrative. Seder dafka b'sipur. We have to tell the sipur. V'loy b'zechira. It's not just zechira Yetzias Mitzrayim where we vaguely remember it. We must take the journey. So you can sort of substitute the word sipur for journey. That's what it is. We take the journey through the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And as Baran, it's explained just Sipur Malashon, ear, sefer, v'sefer. I'm not sure what he's referencing over there. V'hainu, shesefer hu kibutz v'ichad shal haber pratim. I'm not actually sure what he's referencing here. Sapar? What's the pronunciation here? I'm not sure. But he says that a sefer, what that really means is Kibbutz v'ichud shel habi pratim. That's what a book is. It's a collection of words that become sentences, sentences that become paragraphs, paragraphs that become chapters, and chapters that become a book. It's a collection of disparate elements that are bound together. Shenasim em inyan echad, they become one thing. V'cheinu hamashma'us shel ir sefar, I guess, or sefer, shehi makifa magbila es kol haaretz, val yada nasa miribu arim eretz achas gedoyla hamokefes b'gvul. I guess there's some reference in Psukim or in Chazal of something called an ir sefer. What does that mean? It means that it's a collection of many small city-states that are brought together into an empire. Right? And we use the word sefer, which is a connotation of a sipor, which is the gathering together of disparate parts that come together in one narrative, where you can step back and you can see the big picture of the whole.
Does safar mean border? Something rings
Border?
from Nachat.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe that's what he's referring to. Okay, v'zeu oimek mitzvah sipur yitzias Mitzrayim. This is what we're trying to get out of the mitzvah of sipur yitzias Mitzrayim alel haseder. We are not only speaking about getting out of Galus. As we know, the Gemara and Halacha tell us, we start the story with Avadim Ayinu L'Par B'Mitzrayim, and we describe Vayanunu, how they enslaved us, Vanitzak, we speak about, and maybe we try to enable our students, our children, to which are our students, right? And our students should be our children, to recognize, to my mother, they really, really are, right? I have to say, right? Where we enable them to recognize what it was like, the shibud. Parenthetically, the Pius Setzner Rebbe in a Sefer Achshar Savreichem, I know some of you may still be on the chat for our Amichai Eliyahu, where I'm posting from time to time, like 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 50 seconds. It has to be specific because after that my phone starts a new video file, so I have to cram it into exactly 6 minutes and 50 seconds. And someone came with a gematria that it's some word in a pasuk that has the letters Yud Shin Kuf, or maybe even Yud Shin Kuf, is the gematria, the number of seconds in 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and his Rosh Hashanah is Yaakov Shalom Klein. Anyway, what can you do? So that's I don't know if he used AI for that. I don't know, but this is what he came over to me, very excited to tell me during Shacharis on Shabbos. Anyway, so 6 minutes and 50 seconds. So why am I mentioning that? Because we're going through Sefer Achshar Savreichem, which speaks about the Pius Setzner's mahalach of koach hadimyon. We've been speaking about koach hadimyon, where you can utilize the potential to imagine, to deepen our experience of Yiddishkeit, where we can awaken our emotions based on the time that we take to really use our capacity of dimyon, of visualization, to really get into what Shabbos is, for example. He says over there what Shalosh Shudas is, what Pesach is, and he has I think 10 or maybe more, a little bit more, a little bit less pages, giving an example of what the visualization of getting into the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim would look like. And based on Midrashim, which Rabbi Zimon was also super strong about. If you don't know the Midrashim, it fills in so much more detail. Using the Midrashim, he mamish walks you through a visualization. Imagine if you were there. Imagine what the questions the children were asking, the conversations that were being had, the day-to-day concerns. He literally walks you through it. I just sent it to Rivki, actually, my sister, who was asking me about, because she was watching the video, so I can send it to you as well. So I took pictures of it and I sent it to her. And the way that he describes the shibud, the galus, incredible. COVID year, we got stuck in Eretz Yisrael. COVID year, we were privileged to be in Eretz Yisrael. We were unable to come to spend Pesach with family. It was just us, my wife and I, and it was also my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, who lived in the building next door, and they weren't really allowed to come. They snuck out and they just came and joined the Seder. So we had to do with the family we had there, and we sat there, and I went through that whole thing. Because there was no kids, there was no rush, there was nothing. There was just us, and it was really special. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, to visualize that. We start with the shibud, misaprim. We tell on the bottom of this page as kol hapratim. We're going to the second page. Shel hatzaras, all the details of the pain. Like we see how the Haggadah starts off. We speak about all the pain and all the suffering, the trials and tribulations that Am Yisrael went through in Mitzrayim. Again, like the Gemara tells us, Maschil begnus. We begin with the gnus, which is the difficulty. And we say in the Haggadah the pasuk, "Vayira Isanu HaMitzri v'yanunu v'yitnu aleinu avodah kasha." They made us miserable. And we go through in the Haggadah called Teva v'Teva, what each and every word means. Again, what's the point? Not just reading off drashas from Chazal. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Save it for Gemara lessons. Like what? This is not. People make the mistake of thinking this part. We can just rush through and leave the kids out of it. On the contrary, okay, little kids is little kids. You let them play. But for the bigger kids, we have to understand the Haggadah is intending to give us a framework, and it's telling us, look more deeply into the psukim, just like Chazal did. Follow their lead. Chazal pick up on nuances in the word. They tell us this word is, again, it's a doorway, it's a portal into a whole new realm of experience and meaning. And they're trying to train us, toch kedei the Haggadah, to do this with every aspect of the Seder. The way to make it engaging is, when we're telling the story in such a way, to try to help our children, and it works better with teens, obviously, little kids it's more difficult, but even for them on their level, to help them reflect, what might you have felt like? Let's imagine that as a family. Not just the props, Shaboy. Not just, and it's also beautiful. We have a beautiful minhag in our, everybody's already tipsy after 2 cups, so, whatever, and we put the pillows on our back and we march out, which is gewaldic. And it's fun and it's experiential, and many families do this. It's a minhag, it's beautiful. But the element of asking kids, let's really get into it together. Let's sit here. Let's not rush through the Haggadahs that we bring home from school with all the stuff. He said also, hard stop. He said they give each kid 3 minutes max. He said, I don't care, you're in the middle of a brisker rav. You finish in 3 minutes, you're done. Because he said it gets out of hand.
Very good news for teachers.
I'm sorry, but
I don't think they get the memo.
But on the contrary, I would say that for teachers, it would take a lot of the pressure off. If this is what you can give your kids, you don't have to come with different Torah. But what they do have to have is an experiential, emotional connection to what that might have been like.
There are actually 2 books that I just read. One's The Last Slave.
I was just going to say.
And Dual Discovery. I'm in Mitzrayim right now. That's how
I never heard of either of those. He held up the book Let My People Go, so he really encouraged that, which I've seen.
Let My Nation
Go. Is that what it is? Let My
Last
Nation
Slave,
Go.
but Dual Discovery. I just read it also. Not normally.
If you can somehow get a link to me, I'd love to look at that. Wow. Okay, this is what it is.
Last Slave and Dual Discovery.
This is what it is. So to ask questions that are going to help them to enter into that emotional experience, and put it into contemporary terms, which unfortunately is not so difficult. Chas v'shalom is not so far to, etc. What?
This week we're really in it.
Yes, mamish.
Yeah.
Mamish. And this generation, we're really in it. And the generation of our generation, children and children of Holocaust survivors, we are already in it, right? We don't have to, and that's why utilizing, I want to make a clear point. Sure, there's an element of b'chol dar v'dar oimdim aleinu l'chalisenu, right? V'hisha amda v'chule. But it's not about the Holocaust, the Pesach Seder. It's not. It can be used as a tool to help us experience and to understand in a contemporary form what that looked like. With Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, this is the most important thing. That our kids should go to sleep at night having felt like they took a journey. It's a whole different kind of Seder. And again, I want to make this super duper clear, and we're going to read about this in a minute. It's much easier said than done, like everything, and everything is beautiful, right? It doesn't have to be this way. This is an ideal that it's important as a perspective to think about, contemplate how we might help our Seder move in this direction just a little bit more, okay? But nobody has a dream Seder. I'm sure that Rabbi Ziedman's Seder is very beautiful, but I'm sure that, you know what I'm saying? Let's be honest. Nobody has this idyllic, perfect experience. Doesn't happen. Oh, thank you so much for coming. We start with Gnus. In Mefartas Lashon HaPasuk, we say, we go into every detail of this pasuk. We explain every word. What each and every detail is referring to. Hitchila ge'ulas shel Yisrael. Then we start to speak about the ge'ula is beginning. And we speak about the 10 makos and what each of them represent and what each of them were, but the experience of it, v'chein hala, and onward ad hayetzia mehagalos. This is the sipur. By putting it in this narrative framework, where we don't just speak conceptually, but we tell the story, we allow the story to be told through us, we immerse ourselves in that experience, it becomes very clear, and here we get to the point. People make the mistake of thinking that Yitzias Mitzrayim was a wonderful thing because we were in a horrible experience, and we got free from that experience. And we had to get out of Mitzrayim because Mitzrayim was hell. We had to get out of it. And that's certainly true on a certain level. But a more accurate and a deeper way to understand this dynamic of Galus and Geula is not that we had to get out of Galus. We had to get through Galus. Meaning to say, our redemption did not happen despite the Galus, but it happened on the level that it happened, in the way that it happened, enabling us then 50 days later to be standing Ke'isha Echad B'Lev Echad at the foot of our Sinai, specifically because of our having gone through what we went through in Mitzrayim. Says Rav Kluger, you know what enables us to recognize that? The form of experiencing the historical exodus from Egypt in story or narrative form. Because what did he say about Sefer, which is Sipur, is in a Sefer, and Misaper, it's all one thing, obviously, is that it's a bunch of disparate details that become bound together as one, so that when the last page in the book is turned, you recognize that you could never have gotten to the happy ever after without going through the first chapters. It is a davar shalem. You cannot have had one without the other. That's the depth of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. It becomes a narrative where we can never have gotten to the later chapters without the earlier experiences. Lay hayu l'rik chas v'shalom. It was not pointless. Ela hayat siruf. It was a clarification, ubirur, and a refinement. It was a very specific process to enable us to become who we are and who we'd always be. Shal nishmas Yisrael, and what's called in Chazal bikur habarzel, and this like terrible pot, the smelting pot that enabled the iron to lose its dregs, all the impurities, and to become capable of being molded into what it can be molded into. We went from being avadim to paro to become banim to the infinite one. And that had to be experienced in precisely the way that it was experienced. Who knows if our spiritual DNA of Rachmanim, Baishanim, Goim Lechasadim would have been that way if Am Yisrael hadn't gone through what we went through in Galus, experiencing exactly the opposite of Baishanos, Erev Ha'aretz, the opposite of Gemilas Chasadim, the most horrible cruelty, the aspect of Rachmanim. People who go through that become refined, become sensitive. That's why I've been speaking so much. I mentioned it this year about how in this whole conflict, now that we have an army, and now that we have a state, and now that we have to be careful not to lose that, because it can just as easily be lost as gained. But to be careful. Even though Israel has to do it, again, these two things can be true at once. I'm not speaking about their strategy, but I'm speaking about the spirit of refinement that we can lose when we become callous, and we become indiscriminate, and we start to say horrible things. We have to be careful, right? That's what I said in the beginning, and I mentioned that now in a few Zoom share. Very, very important. When people go through suffering, they become refined. They learn lessons. They recognize that life is a curriculum. Hashem is trying to teach us something. Life is a process of learning. Not just experience, but insight that we gain because of the experiences that we go through. For the purpose then of being able to make the world just a bit better by helping to guide others in such a way that you can help others not have to go through all of those issues and yet have the insight that you're trying to give them. And that process happens over thousands and thousands of years. It's still unfolding. It happens through each and every one of our lives, and it's still unfolding. Baruch Hashem, 120. What Chazal mean when they say Lefum Sara Agra? What do the words translate as? What does it mean? Lefum Sara Agra, in accordance with?
The pain is the reward.
The pain is the reward. What's the standard understanding of that? On a basic level.
The harder you
What do you
work,
say?
the more
Reward,
you benefit.
Either the harder you work or the more difficult it is, right? Yeah, well, the harder, right, meaning the harder you have to work, so the more reward you get because it was more difficult. That's the standard, true explanation. I think it means something much deeper. I think it means much deeper. When we understand that the greatest schar in this world and in the next world, we've spoken about this, is consciousness, which is closeness to Hashem, literally, that's what it means. Das, the deep, intimate experience of the divine, that is what we're after. And that is the agra, the reward. Then I'd like to read the Mishnah like this. Lefum tsara. The more pain a person experiences in their life, agra, the more they come to know, the more insight they gain. The deeper they become, the more sensitive they become. Not reward in Olam Haba, in this world. The greatest reward in the world is commensurate with the challenges that a person goes through. And all of us go through challenges. Every single one of us. There's not a human being who doesn't. Adam la'amal yulad. Man was born, and woman was born to toil. To toil. There's nobody who has it perfectly good. And every person has their own pekel. Every person has their own aspect. I have mine. We all have ours. Lefum tsara, in direct accordance with how much we go through, agra, we gain so much from those experiences. We become so much deeper. We become so much less judgmental toward other people because we know what it means to struggle. We become so much wiser, so much bigger as people, so much more conscious of the truth of life that we turn around and we say, I wouldn't have had it any other way. I wouldn't have had it any other way. That's the greatest moment in life. And it's a series of moments. Sometimes we are more clear on this, sometimes it hurts more, and we wish that things would have happened otherwise. But my hope for myself, my blessing to all of us, is that at 119 years old and 364 days, you turn around and you look back and you say, I get it. I get it. This is what I had to be. This was my light. And it had to be channeled in terms of all the pain and all of the gain in precisely this way. Couldn't have happened in another way. Couldn't have. It just couldn't have. Not an iota of it. Not a detail of it. Cesar Kluger, now we're starting to understand why Pesach is so central to the Jewish experience. To the point that the Ramban in Parshas Bo explains that every mitzvah almost is Zeicher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, Shabbos and Tefillin and this and that and Kriyas Shema, everything is Zeicher, goes back to Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's so fundamental because this is the message. Because this is the message for each and every one of us individually, but more broadly, this is the message that you and I are meant to bring to the whole world. Because this is the message of our exile, which is mirrored in the personal exile and redemption of each and every person. This is what we've gained. Hopefully, we've learned something through our experience of exile. Hopefully, we've learned something. I think we have. I think even in the last 20 years, how much we've learned. We've mentioned this before. Mishpacha magazine has played such a huge role in helping destigmatize, and that's just one element, so many communal issues, things that were swept under the rug. Traumas that people have, loss that wasn't addressed, right? And it's a different world today. It's just a different world today. How we're showing up for each other with so much compassion. Children, teenagers. Yeah, Am Yisrael had to go through, I would say, a decade or so of total bewilderment with regard to kids going off the derech, to have developed now Kesher Nafshi, Avi Fishoff, this whole approach that has revolutionized the way that we look at our children, revolutionized the way at what we consider to be a successful child, revolutionized what we value in our children. We were just speaking about this in the car. And we've learned a whole lot, and we continue to learn. It's a beautiful thing. It could have only happened through the struggle. Zecher Litzias Mitzrayim. Says Rav Kluger, that's what the Sipur is. Let's go back inside. Elo hayatziru ubiru shal nishmas Yisrael b'kura barzel. Ubemela move on. It's understood shekala yisurim v'hagzeros, that all of the pain and all of the decrees hayachelik mitahalich. It was part of a necessary part of a necessary process. Aroch, a long process. Shal yitziras ha'uma ha'yisraelis, of the formation of the Jewish spirit, the collective Jewish soul. This is the depth of what it means. The telling of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It means lechaber ula'ached es kol hapratim l'maaseh echad aruch, to gather together all the disparate details and to say it's a story. It's one long story. Ubekach mekabel ma'avana klalis, so that at the end you turn around and we keep on going back as we go through the piyut of echad, of miodea, and we keep on going back and we see no matter how many things the number one fragments into, we dial it all back to echad. That's the culmination of the Pesach Seder. It's a piyut. It's not even part of the Haggadah, really. It's a liturgy that was introduced later on. But in some way, it's the pinnacle, because isn't that the message of everything that we've been trying to accomplish in however many hours the Seder is? That all the different disparate elements, the details that seem to be contradictory, it goes back, Echad Elokeinu b'Shamayim u'va'aretz. It's the whole thing also of Chad Gadya. How it's a process, right? And this happens, and then that happens, and then ultimately, Asa Kodesh Baruch Hu v'shachta l'malach hamaves. It's a story. The whole thing is about stories. The whole thing is about questions and answers, with the realization that you cannot have an answer inside without the bewildering confusion of the question. And we encourage at the Seder our children to ask questions. All this is symbolic, you understand? It means we're trying to give over to them a consciousness that it is okay to struggle. It is okay to ask questions. It is okay to feel confused. It's fine. It is okay to not have things together all the time. I don't, we don't. Why should we expect our children to? It's fine. This is human. It's okay. And then we give the answers, which shows how much insight they'll gain out of their unique journey, their unique struggle, their unique light. Echad Elokeinu b'Shamayim u'va'aretz. Ubekach mekabel havana klalis. We got a universal understanding, u'meroi memes, and an exalted understanding. Al kol koish yashibud v'ayisurim, over everything that we went through. Bekach tevur shitas Hillel. Now we can understand the sheet of Hillel. Shekarach va'achal as ha'pesach va'amatzah ima marar. It's contradictory. One thing is galus and the other thing is mamash geula, but the pinnacle of exile, the pinnacle of redemption. How are you putting these two things together? Adarabba. To the contrary. Shahamarim avates yisurim atzar shalagalus. The marar is expressing the suffering and the pain of exile. And the carbon pesach of the matzah, on the contrary, is reflecting our exodus from exile. Hillel eats these two things together. He brings together, he connects the concepts in the way of narrative, sipur. It's one story, it's one book. It's one revelation. It's one process. The maror with the Pesach and the Matzah es hayisurim im hayeshua. He puts together the suffering together with the salvation. V'asam kol echad. He says it's one thing. It's one thing. The gila, and he reveals shekala yisurim lo yahayu mitziusav la'atzmam, that the suffering weren't just a really horrible thing that happened and then we got free. No. Elakli, it was a vessel. It was a necessary step in a process v'hachana that prepared us l'geula, for the redemption. If I'm not mistaken, the tzaddikim point out that this is really the depth of the symbol of the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to Moshe Rabbeinu when he tells him, you're going to take Am Yisrael out. How did he appear to Moshe Rabbeinu? In a burning bush, a thorn bush, where the pasuk says, v'hasneh boyer be'esh, right? The sneh was on fire, but ve'einenu ucha. It was not getting devoured. It was on fire. You'd expect it to be burnt up. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it says Fasemis, I think. But the tzaddikim explain that The fire is the fire of Har Sinai. Es halapidim, es ha'esh, they saw all the snev, not the snev, sorry, the har bar be'ish, the mountain was on fire. The Torah is a fire. The pasuk says, Eish das lamai. It's a fire. The revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu appears, ki Eish eichelasu, svivan es arama oy, the pasuk atilam, Hashem's surroundings is a burning, stormy fire. That's Hashem. That's redemption of every kind. That is the consuming of the physical world, reducing it to nothing. That's what fire is. To remind us that this is just an illusion. That's why we cover our eyes by Shema Yisrael, because to declare our faith, we have to remember there's a deeper reality than what we can see. That's what fire is, and that's the consuming nature of the way that Hashem reveals himself in a fire, as if to say, klape, in relation to the infinite, this world is dust and ashes. Like Avraham Avinu understood that he was in the presence of the divine. That's the fire. The thorn bush is for sure exile. It's the pinnacle of physicality. It's nothing even grows on it. It's not even aesthetic. It's pokey and it's damaging and it's brittle and it's dry. There's no life. It's everything dead that is manifested, at least in the context of Galus Mitzrayim, in the exile. HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals to himself to Moshe Rabbeinu in such a way to show him, it is not that we're going to take you out of Mitzrayim and then you'll get, to the Torah, and what a Nebuch that you had to schlep you through this whole thing. We could have easily just, Nebuch, this is the way it worked, and they sold Yosef down, and the 12 Shvatim, and the whole thing, this is how it went, either in a natural sense or in a supernatural sense. No, Nebuch, B'diavad. No, the symbol is Lahapich. Hashem shows Moshe Rabbeinu that the thorn bush, the exile, is the vessel for the flame. Literally the vessel for the flame. And that once you get to the flame, preserve your memory of the struggle. Because from that perspective, it was part and parcel of the journey. It's a necessary element of it. Can't have one without the other. That's how Hashem shows up to Moshe Rabbeinu to symbolize what this dynamic is of leaving Mitzrayim and going into Geula. And of course, it had to be Hillel. Hillel is the compassionate one. We know Hillel and Shammai. Shammai was a kaptan. If we could understand what Shammai is, on his level. But Hillel is compassionate. He's the one who understands the journey. He's the one who understands how much we need each other. How much we need to become sensitive to the pain of the other the more that we experience what we go through, which is why he tells the ger who tells to Hillel, teach me the whole Torah standing on one foot. What does he tell him? Just be able to see another person for what they really are. Because you've come to see yourself for what you really are, for what the human really is. We need each other. That's Hillel. Hillel is Rosh Tevis, Harofe L'Shvurei Leiv. Hillel. Harofe L'Shvurei Leiv. What is a Shavur Leiv? A broken heart means that there's a part of me that's over here, there's a part of me that's what's broken. It means distinct, two different elements. Hillel is Roife L'Shvurei Leiv. He says, these two experiences that you have, sometimes feeling fragmented, that part of you is here and part of you is there, and like the Zohar Kodesh says, the heart of a Jew always has two parts. One part is always crying and one part is always dancing. That's what the Zohar Kodesh says. Thousands of years ago. It's the Jewish spirit. One foot in the past and one foot in the future. When we'll really laugh. Hillel says they're one thing. Maybe this is what the Kotzker Rebbe meant when he said there is nothing as whole as a broken heart, potentially. If we understand the concept of brokenheartedness properly, Gewalt is that whole. Because then it's not just that I'm rejoicing in a moment of simcha and I'll just forget about my tsaros for now. That's not a whole heart. That is not a whole heart. Because in a certain sense, you're leaving half your life out. This is the secret of what Rabbi Nachman teaches in the Kutumar Tanyana. Very famous, was turned into a song about the need to drag someone into the circle. You ever heard this? That there's a circle of men or dancing or something, or maybe women at a wedding, and there's somebody who's dejected standing at a side. Sitting on the side, and they're too sad to move, or they're too self-conscious, or they're too broken, and they just can't bring themselves to dance. Because Rabbi Nachman says to dance, the joy, whatever little joy is in your heart, has to be so powerful that it reaches down to your legs. If it doesn't reach your legs, you can't dance. So some people, they might have a little joy in their heart, but it's not enough. Doesn't. Says Rabbi Nachman, a compassionate person goes over to that person and takes their hand and is so full of joy that his joy extends. You drag him into the circle. Bring him into it. Says Rabbi Nachman, this is a mashal for our own fragmented lives. He says there are going to be times in your life when you're rejoicing. Don't leave any part of your journey or your story out of that moment. He says this, bring your mara shchayra, bring your darkness into the dance. Unbelievably powerful. Bring your darkness into the machol, into the circle. There's nothing as whole as a broken heart that's then made whole with the perspective of Korech, which is the essence of the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is Haroife l'shvurei lev u'mechabe shlat tzvaisim. Let's finish up last few minutes. Ya'iru divrei asvas emes. How illuminated and how shining and how incredibly lichtig are the heilige words of the Svas Emes. What a beautiful Svas Emes. So simple, but so deep. Amish, so deep. Shekasav leva'er. He explains Madua Nikra Lel Pesach. Why do we call the first and second night of Pesach, depending on where you are in the States, Lel HaSeder? Why do we call it Lel HaSeder?
Just curious to see them.
Yeah. Why do we call it Lel HaSeder? We should call it Lel Pesach, Lel Yetzias Mitzrayim. What's Lel HaSeder? L'ramez or l'lame. This is so simple and it's so deep at the same time. It's coming to teach us shekal hagalus, that the whole galus, which is lel, which is lila, which is darkness, ha'isa al pi seder. It's lel ha-seder. It was in an order, meaning it was part of a process. Isn't that beautiful? It's a simple thing. Lel ha-seder will never be the same for me, those two words now. Because that's what the Seder night is. It's showing that Laila has a Seder too. That it's all part of a talich, it's part of a process. Hashem is running the world. Hashem is running his world. That the whole experience of exile, it's a good story, it's a beautiful story. It ends well, it ends in the most expansive, exalted way, that we never could have gotten to that without the pain, individually and collectively. Inuyam v'tza'akasam. We speak about the pain that they went through and their cry. And that's again why we're eating both the matzah and the maror. And like Hillel, because the Roifel L'Shvorei Leiv puts them together. Ki yesh l'shabeach l'haidos ala galus k'moi ala gula. What a line! You have to thank Hashem. It's not just thank Hashem for the gula. You thank Hashem. So it's funny when you mentioned before, are we saying Hallel for the great miracle? In a certain very deep way, we have to thank Hashem for the whole thing of it. Because what do we know? Both the attack and the defense. Both the offense, which seems going to be now, and the counterattack. And Be'ez Hashem, the defense. And what do we know? What do we know? Hashem's running his world perfectly. From our perspective, we do our shtadlus and tehillim and davening and caring. But never ever to lose touch with this realization. This is emunah. This is what emunah means. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Kol prat uprat is fine with a capital F because Hashem is running his world. We do our best. We do our shtadlus. Lel HaSeder. Hashem is running the world. Hashem is running the world. Shalei Nemar. So then he says over here, and this is reading this Hashem is venerally oid perish Seder. This is actually the source. But it reminds the hin shagam kol taluchas hagalus. Oh yeah, hakol Seder miyuchad. The whole exile with every detail was also a very specific Seder. Shalei Nemar kikar siba sheshalat paral b'nei Yisrael. Never should a person think, oh, it just happenstance. It happened to be that Pari drove the people crazy and killed all their children. A chas v'shalom, a crazy thing. No, what do we know from Hashem's master plan, from the tikkunim atzumim that take place from every tiny little iota of a detail? We're so puny. We know so little. It was already foretold. This was part of the covenant, a covenant of blood. Like we say, a blood covenant. Every detail of the suffering and the detail of what they went through with all their pain and the avodah hayakol b'seder miyuchad. It was in a specific framework, a narrative, an order. Again, we began with the gnai, the difficulty, the pain. And again, it is a crucial, fundamental part of the telling of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And again, I want to reiterate, not simply because then it tells us, wow, we got out of there, wow, what an incredible geula. That's not why. That's the simple understanding. No, from a redemptive perspective, we're able to look back and say that it's not just an aid to then understanding the depth and the breadth and the greatness of the redemption, but we're thanking Hashem for that. And that's what we say in the Hillel, that we say at the end of the Seder, Oidcha Hashem ki anisani, which has two meanings. David HaMelech on the one hand can say, I thank Hashem ki anisani, is lashon oina, to answer someone. I thank you, Hashem, that you answered me. That's Pashup Pshat. But the Mefarshim also learn, even in Pshat, I thank you, Hashem, that what? That you afflicted me. Oidcha Hashem ki anisani, because vatihi li Yeshua. It was my salvation. It was what I needed. It precisely and nothing else. Evan ma'asu aboinim, this stone that I thought was despised and ugly and broken and it becomes haisel roish pina. Not just a stepping stone, but a fundamental part of the building. From beginning to end, the mitzvah is al matzos u'merorim, to eat them together. This is korech. Sheyesh l'shabeach al hagalos. Again, a powerful line. We have to thank Hashem for the galus, kimoy al hageula, to the same degree as we thank Him for the redemption. Now, with the last few minutes, I'm sorry, I'm going a bit over time. We started a couple minutes late, so a few more minutes if that's okay. Keep in mind that he is basically quoting an open Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara Brachas asks a very important question. We say it at the end of Aleinu L'Shabeach, which is instituted, I believe, from the Ariya Kaddish, to say after every davening, Shachris Mincha Amar. It's a tefillah that comes from Kadmonim much earlier, part of which is already in Nach. V'haya Hashem l'melech al kol haaretz. Hashem will be the king of the heaven and the earth. On that day, Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Hashem will be one and His name will be one. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. We just finished proclaiming Shema Yisrael a couple of minutes earlier. V'chia idna lahu echad, says the Gemara. Today Hashem is not one. Then by Yom Hashem will be one. His name, which is really Elokim, which is nature, the world, everything will be one. Then what about now? Says the Gemara, and this is such an important concept, especially in the context of everything we're learning now. Says the Gemara, of course Hashem is one now. But from our lived experience as human beings, we make separate brachos for when good things happen, Baruch Atah V'Ametiv, and Nebuch Leilenu. When negative things happen, we say Baruch Daina Emes. Now, both of them recognize that Baruch, right? That these are expressions of blessing. Both of them recognize that it's coming from one source, and Tov Hashem La'Kol, and Hashem is good, and Kol Mad Avrachman L'Tav Avid. But let's not kid ourselves. We still make separate brachos because we're humans. And Hashem wants, like I mentioned before, that our hishtadlus shouldn't just be to kick our feet up and say, hey, everything that happens is fine. We got to do our hishtadlus in tefillah and in diplomacy and in military, v'chulei v'chahein rabbis, right, with all of it to the best of our capacity, along with the awareness that we're still limited and we won't really know. But we got to do our thing. We mentioned from the British Varav in previous year why we say Yu L'Ratzin at the end of Shemana Esrei, after we just got finished davening all of the different things that we need with healing and bracha and geula and going backwards in order, out of order, and all the different things that we daven for, slicha and everything that we think we need, says the Berditcher, we're good, do that. Because we're humans. And we have to come to Hashem with what we perceive to be negative and what needs fixing. But when you're finished doing that part, then you, at the end of Shemana Esrei, you say, Yu L'Ratzin Imrefi, let whatever I asked for, let it be in accordance with your will. Behega and libi, and you should really think about this. I try to think about this image, pushing it across the table. Now it's yours.
I love this. It helps over all the time.
Behega and libi, it's the Berditchever. Behega and libi lefanecha. Now it's yours. I did my thing because from my perspective, it seems to me that I need parnasa. But you know better than me. You know better, and I'm leaving it up to you. What a healthy mindset, right? So in this world, we make two different brachas. That's very important. The la'asid lavai, which is a little bit of a taste of Seder night. Seder night is a bit of a taste of that ultimate redemption, which is described as being double the miracles, kiflayim, of what Hashem did when He took us out of Mitzrayim. There's a big correlation between Galus Rishon and Galus Sheni, Geula Rishon and Geula Sheni. It's all Moshe Rabbeinu who took us out. Hu Gael Rishon, Hu Gael Achron. It's one thing. Our redemption from Galus now, B'ez Hashem, and our redemption from Galus then. On that day, it says the Gemara, Kulei HaToiv HaMeitiv. We're really going to be able to say Kulei HaToiv HaMeitiv. You make HaToiv HaMeitiv on everything. On the good, and that's what he's saying over here. Sheyesh Shabach ala Galus. Now that word Kamai, keep in mind, put it into perspective. Kamai means, we remember it's from Hashem, but you're not going around saying Baruch HaToiv HaMeitiv when someone dies, right? Meaning that's not where we're at, right? Okay. But there's a part of where we're at that's aligned with that, and that's what we mentioned, how to keep this balance. But Seder night, you can be there. Seder night, you can be there. Leaning to the side, Baruch Hashem, family surrounding the table, breathing in, and we are here, and we haven't changed an iota, and the truth of Torah is forever, and Baruch Hashem, we're flourishing, we'll continue to flourish. You can breathe deep and look back and say, it's good. It's good. Maybe if we can't live with that every minute, for fleeting moments of Seder night, we can get to that. A futuristic perspective. I just want to read you a tiny poem that I wrote a number of years ago about Lel HaSeder, where I guess I was mechavan a little bit to and not in this form of this Fas Emes, touching up Lel HaSeder, that is the Seder of the Laila. But I wrote a little poem years ago called Seder. And people every year are sending back the poem to me and saying that they keep it and they read it again, and it seems to have given people chizuk. So I'm just going to read it. It's very short, and with that we'll wrap up. B'ezras Hashem. Okay. There are few nights approached. It's not a poem, rather. No, it's not a poem. I'm sorry. It's prose. Thought it was a poem. Okay. There are few nights approached with as many expectations as the first night of Pesach. We prepare, we dream, we learn, we plan, we buy engaging agadas and fine wine for the adults, and props and candies for the kids. Surely everyone will be perfectly behaved. Surely everything will proceed in accordance with our idealized vision. It doesn't stop you from assuming this year will be different, but you've been around long enough to know that it's quite likely things won't work out as you hoped. Wine will spill all over the table and stain your pristine kittel. Your divrei will be interrupted. You won't get to use your favorite agada. The kids will be too shy to sing the manashtana. A full-blown fit will be thrown by a little boy or girl who would have rather acted out Sfardeya than Choshech. You will spend half the Seder putting the kids to bed. The Mar won't be as hot as you thought it would be. Your daughter will demand to read every single Dvar Torah from her 500-page Pesach notebooks. Gebrux is a dirty word in your house on Pesach, but your son will immediately dunk his matzah right in the soup. Despite your best intentions, it won't be physically possible for you to drink lechatchila shir for your fourth cup. You will fall asleep before Chad Gadya. Your door will jam by Shvei Chamaska. The Shabbos guy called to unplug an overheated Shabbos lamp, which actually happened to us one year. We'll walk into your perfectly chametz-free home carrying a burger from McDonald's, which isn't a halachic issue, but your minhag is to eat radish for karpas, and your in-laws will eat potato. You won't be familiar with their tunes. Even worse, no one will seem even remotely interested in learning your Alta Zedus Chazanas for V'yishamda. Stop for a minute. Isn't it wonderful that the Torah was given to human beings and not angels? Close your eyes and remember it's about Hashem. It's about trying our best, not for us, but for Him. This might be your b'diavad, but it is His lechatchila. You call it chaos. He calls it Seder. That's the Seder. If we could go into the Seder with this perspective, taking some of what I mentioned before, to try our best. And this, I'm talking about Seder night, but I'm talking about all of life. We call it chaos. He calls it Seder. This is what Emunah is. Should only hear revealed good news, B'ezras Hashem, and we should go back to Eretz Yisrael, B'karav Mamash, B'siyata Shema. Okay, thank you. I absolutely agree, and I think that even more than that, I think that, sometimes people have easier experiences with shidduchim than other times. Right, whether it's children, siblings, different friends, people. Some people have a shorter journey, some people have a longer journey. That's the whole, that's why it's kasha, zivugim shaldim kakrias yamsov. It's a famous Torah about how they really, there's one shita that they went around to the same side. They didn't cross the yamsov, but they actually left in one place, they went to the other. So if you keep track, if there were 12 shvatim and each one walked through their own lane, so presumably Ruvain had the shortest one because he just went around like this. Right, and Binyamin, right, the Shvatim all the way at the end had to walk the perimeter, so they had a longer journey. That's a classic Shabbat Brachas Torah. How different people, that's one of the connections between Kriyas Yamsov. Okay, beautiful. But that's the fact. Certainly, parents of a child, I could assume, who found their zivug, the first girl, quick, boom, right out of seminary or right out of yeshiva, and it goes beautifully. You walk down the chuppah, it's a wedding, and it's the greatest joy in the world. But I remember being at chasanas where there was more of a story. Whether it was a story because it took them a longer time, whether it was a story because who knows what they had to go through in their life, the difficulties they had as teenagers, or the struggles that they encountered, or a person who deals with a health thing, right? And chas v'shalom, they never thought that they'd see this day. Could you compare? So it's mamash this. Why are they crying? Why are they crying? Everyone should be smiling. It's exactly what you're saying, because the pain becomes part of the joy becomes part of the pain. It's one sipur. That's exactly it, yes.
We'll ever really understand.
Right, so thank you for the opportunity to clarify. You're 1,000% right. Of course we don't know. And not even won't we know for sure. We most certainly won't. We most probably won't ever know. Until we get to the next world. That's not what we're speaking about, though. We're not speaking about now. I know I can look back and retrospectively, I understand the reason why I had to go through that. Lav dafka. I understand how that experience contributed to the broader narrative of my existence. It's a different thing. I don't know why, what Gilgal thing in some previous thing I had with this person that we had to fight, and now we don't talk anymore, and that's a tikkun because who I don't know chas v'shalom. I don't know that.
So we may not necessarily ever know.
Not in this lifetime. Certainly, when we get to the other side, they say down here there are no answers, up there are no questions. We see the other side of the tapestry for sure. But what we could, and you know what? Thank you. I'll just make one more point clear. A prerequisite for being able to get to a place where you look back on pain and you see that, again, not knowing the reason for it, but you see that as having had value for the greater, broader picture, is to have the healthy perspective on pain going through life, meaning forward-facing, where I got to learn something from this. Everything, like I said, is a curriculum, is a learning experience. If that's our consciousness, and I know that it's all a joke, the whole thing is one huge joke, it's a schok that we're going to see at the end. It's a little, and it's Hashem is just helping to refine us. The way He refines us is by putting us through things, and giving us the strength and the courage. And we have to learn from tzaddikim who help us discover that strength and courage, that we can turn that negative experience, whether it's loss or whether it's difficulty with children, let's say, or whether it's difficulty in any area with parnasa or nisyonos of every kind as they come up throughout our lives. This is Hashem giving me an opportunity to broaden my perspectives, deepen my perspectives, connect to Him more deeply, connect to Him, and that's the reason, right? Now, is that the reason Klape Shmaya? I'm sure there are billions of different reasons that we'll never be able to grasp in this world. But in terms of it having had utility, value, that's something that I think that all of us, B'ezras Hashem, if we manage and we're zocha to maximize those challenges, right, which are really opportunities, then you turn around and you say, I get it, because I could never have become the person I am. I could never have become the person I am without going through that. That's what I meant, more specifically. real crux of it. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's an easy way out. It's not enough. No, it's not. Because remember, the Piasat Rebbe says that there's not one part of the human functionality that doesn't have a purpose. Not one. So he said, and meaning a purpose in Kedusha. So he says, what do you think? Hashem gave us the capacity for imagination for nothing? Why do we have imagination? He says, we need to, you're right. No, I don't know what it's like to be a slave. I can imagine what it's like. And what a beautiful process if we turn the Seder into a collaborative effort, as it were, between the adults and the children, that every person is contributing like what they imagine, and different people will come up with different aspects, different details that they'll share, and it will contribute to an image. Now, does that mean that there's no part during the Seder where we shouldn't make it super personal, especially in the context of this understanding where we talk about our personal experiences? Of course there's time for that. But Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and again, I'm saying this like I always knew this. Sunday night really opened my eyes. He really, with this, it changed my perspective on what a Seder is supposed to look like. Not just reading the Haggadah. He said, don't say it in Hebrew. Say it in English. He says, no Indian to say it, Dafka in Hebrew. He really pushed this point home. Like, mamish, the ikr is communicate to your children the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not the messages and the Torahs about it, just the story in the most visceral way that you can. So I would say that really we should use. You're right. These books, for example, they were written by people presumably who weren't slaves in Egypt, right? But they took the midrashim and they used their imagination. They filled in the details. And wow. So that's what I'd say. Again. Why do we daven Shemona Esrei? If we really know, it's the same. It's the balance. And that's why I thought it was important to bring up the Gemara and Brachas to remember we are not there yet. We are not there yet. Only Hashem knows precisely what we need, and we'll get what we need one way or another. Our task is to try with our bechira, and that's always this balance, with our bechira, having been given the Torah, to pave for ourselves the most advantageous journey through life in the smoothest, simplest, easiest way that we possibly can. The struggles will come. We don't bless them on each other, but that's the fact. That's just the fact. Ein tzaddik ba'aretz lo she'aseh tov le'yechta. It's true in spiritual matters. There's no perfect person who won't ever slip, but won't ever fall, no such thing. And there's no such thing as a person who lives life challenge free. No such thing. Okay.
Thank you.
It's such a different experience.
Yes.
It's so. I'm telling you, I appreciate the Zoom because I'm able to give shiurim. It's so hard for me. That's why I ask if you can to have the faces on. Otherwise, sometimes I'm giving shiurim, there are 20 people on, and I'm not even sure if there are people there. It's mamish inhuman. How am I supposed to? I need human interaction. Like I can't even. I don't know. Am I?
Totally.
Who knows? Anyway, so thank you so much for arranging it, Baruch Hashem. I'm so happy this was able to work out. Thank you all for making the time for coming, and hopefully we'll take these ideas, we'll apply them to our Pesach.